My name is Angela. I'm co-creator of Regen City. We've got a bit of housekeeping before we start. So this session is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube after. Our format for today will begin with a 40-minute fireside chat followed by a 10-minute Q&A. We also have our wonderful support team from Regen City, Kat, who will be keeping an eye on the chat. And a little bit about Regen City before we begin. So Regen City is an urban ecosystem builder dedicated to accelerating nature-positive solutions and thriving urban futures, rooted in the understanding that healthy cities depend on nature. We raise awareness about the vital role nature plays in building urban resilience, tackling climate change, and improving human well-being. Through intentional gatherings and experiences, we deepen nature connectedness and showcase innovators working at the intersection of nature, technology, and cities. Together, we're creating urban futures where regeneration is a new standard. And now I'm going to hand over to my fellow co-creator, Ben, to kick us off.
Thanks, Angela. It's incredible to be here with all of you. So yeah, my name is Ben. I'm also co-creator of Regen City, and I'm honored to introduce our guest today, Samantha Power. Samantha is the founder and director of the BioFi project and founder and principal consultant at Finance for Gaia. She's a regenerative economist, futurist, and bioregionalist based in Oakland, California, on the ancestral land of the Ohlone people. With a background working at the World Bank and advising financial institutions, she now champions the need for a decentralized approach to finance that puts the resources in the hands of people living in relationship to place. Last June, Samantha co-authored and published Bioregional Financing Facilities, a book outlining how to shift capital to local regenerators in order to achieve global climate and nature goals. The book launched alongside the BioFi project, a collective of experts supporting bioregions globally to design, build, and implement bioregional financing facilities. It's such a privilege to have Samantha with us today to share her vision and deep expertise. Samantha, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, Benjamin. Really excited to be here with your community today.
It's our pleasure. So to kick things off, I think you've got a few slides to share with us to kind of set things up and introduce BioFi. So yeah, over to you.
Fantastic. I think Kat is going to share my slides. Thank you, Kat. Nice to see some familiar faces on here today. Okay, so I'll share a bit of context and then I'll get into a little bit of what BioFi is and what these bioregional financing facilities are that the BioFi project is creating. And then I'll get to have a chat with Benjamin and then we'll hear from all of you. So I would like to start our discussion today with reminding all of us that every city is in a bioregion. And every city is having an impact on bioregions far beyond the bioregion that it is in. Every city, I believe, needs bioregionalism right now in order to navigate the sixth mass extinction, climate change, inequality, the housing crisis, rising fascism, and all the other problems that we're experiencing as part of this meta crisis that is unfolding right now. And bioregionalism, I believe, encompasses so many things that can support us in navigating this crisis and moving into a regenerative way of being. And it encompasses working with rather than against the ecological functionality of nature and moving out of seeing and interacting with the world from a reductionist or domination paradigm and into embodying a more earth-centric living systems way of being and ontology that sees all parts of the earth as interconnected, living, breathing, alive, and intelligent and moving towards regeneration at all times. So today we're going to talk about how that way of interacting with the world can inform the redesign of our financial and economic systems, and also the redesign of cities and how we finance regeneration in those cities. So Kat, with that, can I have the next slide, please? So I'm just going to define some terms here. Bioregion is a region that is defined by what we like to call hard lines, soft lines, and human lines, or its physical, ecological, and cultural characteristics and all of their interconnections. So bioregionalism is kind of a buzzword right now. It's a movement that is gaining a lot of momentum that originally began in North America in the 1960s and was pretty active through the 80s and even the early 90s, and then went underground for a little while, and it's kind of resurging right now. And that's the philosophy that my work is deeply rooted in. Next slide, please, Kat. So bioregions can be seen as the natural units of place-based regeneration, enabling the interweaving of life's flows across species, the physical territory, and the cultural meanings of place. Next slide, please. And as you all are well aware, we are in the middle of the sixth mass extinction on Earth. It is unfolding before our eyes and all around us. And as people are better understanding this, there is a wave of capital that is forming that is committed to investing in regenerating the biosphere. And for a good part of my early career, I was working with investors and financial policymakers that were helping to catalyze this wave of capital. And I was producing a lot of research on that, the need for investors to invest in regeneration. Next slide, please. But as I continued to work on this, I was witnessing this very painful gap between funders and regenerators. A gap in connectivity where there are so many amazing regenerative projects around the world, but they are often very small scale, grassroots, and illegible to funders. A gap in socio-ecological integrity, where current financing approaches often perpetuate the extractive processes and power structures that I saw driving the ecological crisis and the broader meta crisis. And of course, a gap in worldview and language, where capital is rarely deployed in alignment with the living systems approach that sees the earth as a living, breathing, interconnected, and yes, sacred organism. Next slide, please. And so this idea came to me for a new layer in the global financial architecture of connective tissue that could connect the increasingly centralized financial resources, because that's what capitalism does. It concentrates financial resources to this decentralized mycelial network of regeneration happening often under the soil in ways that are hard to see unless you're in a place for a long time and you get to know the work happening there. And so bioregional financing facilities kind of came into my mind as a way to connect these things and allow financial resources to flow to projects that really need them, and to allow regenerative benefits to flow to the capital providers that are actively seeking them and to the world more broadly. And they will do this in alignment with living systems principles and indigenous wisdom. And we'll talk more about that soon. Next slide, please. So bioregional financing facilities, or BFFs, as we like to call them, have three objectives. They drive the decentralization of financial resource governance. We believe this is really critical. You can't have, just a handful of people in New York and London and Tokyo deciding where all of the money flows to regeneration. You need to have people that are living in relationship with place, that are connected to the collective intelligence of a place, making decisions that are more efficient about how capital flows to support catalytic regeneration in the places that they live and they know. BFFs also organize synergistic portfolios of projects. So, this is often a complaint of capital providers that, these projects are too small for them, the due diligence is too high. So a BFF can aggregate portfolios of projects that together are greater than the sum of their parts and apply living systems principles to how they interact to shift systems and catalyze regeneration. And then third, BFFs catalyze the transition to a regenerative economy. So every dollar that's flowing through a bioregional financing facility is looking at how it's catalyzing the transition to a regenerative way of meeting the needs of all of the life in the bioregion. So it's taking a very long-term perspective, which is very different than how most capital flows right now. And there are 12 attributes for BFFs, and I won't get into all of them right now, but these are available in the BFF book, which there's a free ebook on our website, and you can also order a paperback copy there. But the first and most central one is that they aim to align with living systems principles and indigenous wisdom. So here we draw on Fridolf Capra's work and Dana Meadows' work. So it's taking systems design and living systems approaches and applying that to financial and economic design and restructuring. And then, of course, we believe that indigenous wisdom can inform how money flows right now. And that wisdom should be, we believe, sourced from place. So it should come from the ancient relationship between humans and the land that they've been stewarding. And we want to invest with that wisdom driving how money flows. Bioregional financing facilities, we believe, should serve the realization of a long-term bioregional regeneration strategy. So this is a vision for, 20, 50, 100 years of regeneration in that bioregion and what the people in that bioregion and perhaps the more than human life in that bioregion wants it to look like in the future and to feel like. Bioregions implement an inclusive and participatory governance structure. So there are all kinds of elements of citizens' assemblies and ways that the collective intelligence of a place can feed into how a BFF invests. They work to shift power imbalances. They treat growth and returns as a means, but not an end in and of themselves. They do sensing and MRV that takes an integrated approach that's integrating the best available digital technology with ancient technology in terms of ways of sensing the health and well-being of the people and the land. And I think I'll leave the rest of those for now. Next slide, please, Kat. Thank you. So there are 4 BFF templates that we lay out in the book, and we'll probably develop more of these over time. We've already gotten a request for a bioregional insurance company, but I'll go through them quickly. The first is a bioregional trust, which essentially functions as a catalytic grant facility that grants to the most catalytic projects in the bioregion and supports the development of potential enterprises or nonprofits that can scale up and take larger amounts of capital over time. The Venture Studio incubates a cohort of entrepreneurs that are working synergistically to catalyze the change of a particular system in a bioregion. So it could be focused on the food system, or we're working with several bioregions that are trying to catalyze the shift to an indigenous bioeconomy. And so these entrepreneurs work together to create something that is bigger than the sum of each of their parts. The bioregional investment company is a larger bioregional financing facility that once there are enough regenerative enterprises and nonprofits in the bioregion can invest in them at scale, including through bonds similar to a municipal bond structure. And then lastly, the bioregional bank functions very similarly to what we in the US call a community development financial institution, or CDFI, that provides low interest loans to entrepreneurs, technical assistance, lines of credit. And then we also envision that the bioregional bank can support communities in developing and issuing their own currency, which enables them to better integrate a local perception of value into the financial system rather than having to use a fiat currency, which they do not control the monetary policy of. And BFFs are created through the application of the 16 BioFi design principles that we've developed. And these were built using permaculture design principles, rainwater harvesting principles, Friedhof Capra's life principles, John Fullerton's regenerative economics principles, and Ron Trosper's indigenous economics research. And also just through tending to the land and observing the land. So we're really trying to bring observation of how living systems function into how we design financing facilities. And BFFs fund a range of regenerative actions while generating 4 types of returns. So this is really critical that we aim to generate inspirational returns, ecological returns, social and economic and financial returns, and not to take a narrow lens to how we define returns on investment. And I think that's probably a good place to wrap. And Benjamin, I welcome your questions on this.
Thank you. Well, firstly, thank you for that brilliant primer, and I'm sure we'll kind of dig into some of the themes you mentioned a bit more. I wanted to start by kind of grounding us in a quote that you have in the book quite early on from Buckminster Fuller, which I think really embodies like the whole BioFi approach. You can never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. I wonder, I'm actually going to group a few questions together just in the interest of time. Obviously, we've started by talking about cities, and I really love the kind of provocation you gave us at the beginning. Those of us living in cities are often quite disconnected from nature. And so really interested to hear, how can BioFi kind of help reconnect urban communities with local ecosystems that are, while supporting regeneration? And, if you could share any real examples of kind of BioFi initiatives, particularly in cities, that are successfully channeling funding into regeneration.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question, Benjamin. And I had the pleasure of hearing the brilliant Janine Benyas speak at a conference in the Bay Area last week or week before last, called Pioneers. And if the audience members here haven't yet come across Janine's work, it's really incredible. She is a biomimicry expert, and she had this whole presentation on how we can redesign cities and recreate cities to serve ecological functions that the ecosystems that were there before there were cities were providing. So she was, sharing how buildings can filter air and, generate more clean water than they're using through rainwater harvesting and all of these things. So I think there are ways through redesigning our urban infrastructure that we can get in touch with nature and the ecological functions of nature and bring that into our daily lives in cities. I also think that engaging with the ecological history of a particular city is a really beautiful way to think about deep time and how things change over time and how things were, and then looking at how they are now. And I think that helps us to envision how we would like them to be in the future. And so many cities are built on what were formerly river pathways, right? And deltas. And, we have in many places kind of straightened and controlled the rivers. And every now and then there are problems with that. And the rivers, come into cities and remind us about their original paths and where and how they used to move. So I think connecting with the ecological history of our cities can help to inspire us about how to bring regenerative design into the world that we've created, that is often, coming from more of that reductionist and control paradigm that I spoke about at the beginning, and help us start to relax into what our city might look like if it's designed to be more in the flows of water systems, of species migrations, the flows of nature, of life. And of course, climate change, I think, is inviting us into that, while, everything is rapidly changing before our eyes. We need nature's intelligence and nature's ways of absorbing these shocks that we're experiencing more than ever. And then, of course, there's like connecting to the amazing wild places that your food and water in a city comes from, right? Just like learning more about the farmers that grew your food, and the water sources that your water is coming from. And the biodiversity in cities. I'm always inspired when I visit cities these days and see the amazing parks that are being built, that are planting native plants and, bringing back pollinators and all the amazing birds. I spent some time in Brooklyn in the fall of last year, and the Brooklyn Bridge Park has brought back so many amazing native species. And you're like looking at the Manhattan skyline, but you're in a little forest. So yeah, those are some things that are coming up for me.
Thank you. I wanted to kind of switch gears and talk a little bit about decentralization, obviously kind of a really core principle within BioFi, and seems to kind of go hand in hand with this kind of bioregionalism and kind of reconnection of people in place. Can you talk a little bit about how kind of in the context of kind of decentralization of like a financial system that works in practice, and what challenges, because I'm assuming there are some pretty significant challenges in terms of the transition from the system we have now to this kind of new decentralized system. What challenges need to be overcome to really ensure that kind of communities are truly benefiting?
Yeah, this is a great question. Where to begin? I mean, I think central to this whole shift is trust. And I think that a lack of trust between financial capital holders and communities has gotten in the way of resources flowing to them. And also a lack of trust and ways of governing in the communities themselves, right? And that's something that we as the BioFi project are learning right now. We're leading a learning and design journey for 21 bioregional organizing teams from across the Americas, from Alaska to Argentina, to support them to develop bioregional financing facilities. And we had hoped when we set out to do this work that, okay, in 5 months, like we're going to have bioregional financing facilities, they're going to be ready for investment. Then it's just a matter of, sharing them with the right funders and investors and capitalizing them. But of course, when theory meets practice, you learn about the challenges of organizing people in place and getting agreement on what they want to fund and in what sequence, and supporting that organizing and envisioning in place, right? Just the type of envisioning that we started out the call with, where we're thinking about and feeling into the regenerative cities that we want to live into in the future. That process takes time, and building trust between all of the different leaders in communities takes time, so that they can design this container to receive that capital and flow that capital in a way that aligns with the vision of the community. So, kind of trust between all of the actors at the bioregional organizing level is a challenge and an amazing learning opportunity. And then I think the trust between funders and investors and the bioregional teams themselves, that they can and will steward that capital effectively, and that maybe there's not a need for the kind of paternalistic monitoring and reporting structures that some philanthropists often attach to the grants that they give. Or, we work in the Amazon and in several countries in the global south, and we're looking at multilateral funding coming from the UN and World Bank, and there's a lot of bureaucracy attached with receiving that funding. And I think as we move into hopefully deepening trust and restoring relationship between capital holders, capital stewards, and communities that are doing regenerative work, including through using digital technology and supporting more transparency around their work, I hope that that capital will flow in a faster way.
I want to double click quickly on well, you've talked a little bit about this, but maybe just kind of dive a little deeper. How BioFi draws on kind of indigenous knowledge and living system principles. Like, how do these influence, it's the design of BFFs, and what can we kind of learn from them when we're kind of rethinking, finance, but also finance?
Yeah, I would encourage everyone, if they haven't yet, to check out Fridolf Capra's Living Systems Principles, and they're linked on our website in the Principles, Patterns, and Provocations section of what we call our BioFi resource garden. But he is an amazing physicist who works in a really integrative, transdisciplinary way. And after, I think he's in his early 80s, so, a very long career of observing living systems and how they work, he came out with these principles, and he talks about how life is intelligent, it is networked, and it is regenerative. And I think there's one more that I'm forgetting. But we tune into, all of these things as we're looking at how finance can efficiently flow to the most catalytic projects in a particular bioregion, and really, orienting towards this regenerative capacity of life. And, there's a lot of grief that so many of us feel right now about the sixth mass extinction and everything that's been lost and everything that is continuing to be lost. And what we, keep returning to as the BioFi project is that life is inherently regenerative. And, Janine Benyus and others, often talk about if we just like get out of the way and let life do its thing, that it recovers in many places. But there's also such a critical role for humans to play as stewards to accelerate those regenerative processes and to bring those regenerative processes into places where we have halted it in our cities, right? So, taking up some of the impermeable surfaces and creating space for biodiversity to recover in our cities, for water to be able to that rains on our cities to feed that city, to enable that city to have its water needs met from the water that is landing there. I have some amazing friends working on this in Los Angeles County, which this is a really fun, bioregional finance example. A few years ago, it passed a tax on impermeable surfaces. So any concrete that you're pouring, you have to pay a tax that creates a few $100 million a year that is flowing into the LA County coffers and is allocated to support community-led watershed regeneration projects. And my friends at Accelerate Resilience LA, ARLA, have been working on developing what they call the Living Infrastructure Field Kit that supports communities to design community projects that often take up concrete and support ways to enable water to be captured on rooftops, but also in parks, and creating walkways that are made of permeable pavement rather than impermeable pavement, and providing ways for the land to absorb the water again. And through these tools, communities can engage in kind of the design process that was needed for them to apply for funds, because as I've talked about, even when public funds are allocated for regenerative processes, they're often not reaching the communities that need them. And so, I believe we need bioregional financing facilities, but also these really cool design tools to prepare communities to go through that process, to envision what it is they want to create, and then organize to apply for the funding.
And I realize we've got, I'm sure, a lot of audience questions. So I want to create space for those. So perhaps kind of one last couple of questions from me. For those who are inspired by BioFi and everything they're learning about today, perhaps you could share a few concrete steps that they can take, whatever wherever they may be, whatever communities they may be part of, to kind of engage with and support this movement. And if there are any kind of resources, you've mentioned a few already, that you kind of point them towards. And then finally, I also just wanted to invite you to share kind of what your vision is for the future. If we, if we're able to really scale this movement and this approach, how do you see kind of finance reshaping the way that we live? And also, in cities, would be interesting to hear your thoughts there.
Awesome. Some very rich questions there, Benjamin. I would like to invite this community to also participate in the BioFi community of practice. So we host monthly calls there where we learn about different tools and projects and approaches that our community members are working on, that is supporting the flows of finance to regenerative projects in their bioregions. And in that community, there's a map, so you can see who else in your bioregion is interested in bioregional finance. And it's a good way to find people to have a conversation with, to discuss, what would designing a bioregional financing facility for this bioregion look like? Or, maybe you begin with a small crowdfunding project to support some regenerative initiatives in your bioregion. Or maybe you're interested in organizing a workshop where people people envision what a regenerative economy looks like in your place and the ecological and cultural regeneration projects that it would support. So I really believe that this work has to be done in community and together. And so finding other people in your place or a place that you love, I think is really important. And yeah, maybe I leave it there. Well, I guess you asked about my vision for the future. I hope that in the future, every bioregion on Earth will have people that, one, know they're in a bioregion and identify with that bioregion and being stewards of that bioregion, but also that they have a bioregional financing facility that is supporting all of the amazing and urgent regenerative work happening and is supporting its scaling up. And there's less of this concentration of financial resources and people making investments in land-based projects where they have no connection to that place. And, you know, this kind of focus on financial returns where, you know, people believe the point of money is to use it to generate more money. You know, I'm sure many of us here recognize that that paradigm is not sustainable, and that we need to use the resources that we have, including financial resources, to invest in the health of the living world. And there's a small window in which money is useful to do that. And then there's a certain point after which we pass certain tipping points, and money can't bring back the Amazon or, you know, bring back other systems that have collapsed. And I believe we're in a window now where, you know, money still has power to support regeneration in a pretty profound way, but that it needs to start flowing at scale in the very near future.
What a powerful note to kind of to close on before we open up to the audience. So I want to pause there. I know, Samantha, you had some special guests in the audience that you...
Yeah, I've got a friend I'd love to call on. My friend Jeff Mendelson runs an amazing organization called Local Code that is doing bioregional finance in cities and working with amazing community leaders to support them to identify really important real estate for the community and to eventually own that real estate and to use it in all the ways that support the strengthening of communities and their regeneration. Jeff, you want to share a little bit about what you're up to?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Can people hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, good. Okay. Well, I'm calling in from the Berkeley Marina. So that's when I'm in the Bay Area, I stay on my boat in the Berkeley Marina. So well, this it's been a really inspiring talk. I'll be really brief. I'm approaching this exact same set of principles from the lens of working in urban core communities that have faced structural inequities for generations. So I'm working in mostly Black and brown communities and launched in Kansas City. And what's super exciting to me is this nexus of, you know, kind of the framing that we're using today, you know, is not necessarily the first thing that comes to mind with people that live in these communities, because they're dealing with survival and dealing with a lot of challenges that you know, are just so baseline and fundamental. And what's been exciting in my work at Local Code is finding that there's a way to bridge and there's a way to address these deep fundamental inequities with real estate that embodies a lot of the principles that Samantha so eloquently describes. And so my mission is and will be for the rest of my career to help bring human and financial resources into these communities in such a way that it supports them in building their own local resilient economies and regenerative economies. And there's just it's a long story, but I'll leave it at that. And it launched in Kansas City. There's two amazing Black women entrepreneurs that we're working with. They're each doing the largest project in their neighborhood. There's the key principle is designing in alignment with the neighborhood determinants of health. So health is something that registers in the communities, and when you design for health, you design for regeneration. So it's all these various, threads are coming together. And now we're trying to figure out how to unlock larger pools of capital so that the role they play flips from being extractive and displacing, so that larger capital can be structured properly. When it does come into these communities, it actually serves. So I'll leave it at that. Love collaborating with Samantha, and then anybody else that is interested in urban core work, please be in touch.
Awesome. And I dropped the link to local code Kansas City in the chat. Yeah, reach out to Jeff if this inspires you.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Sure.
So we've got a few questions from the audience. I want to come first to Stephen, because I know you've had your hand up for a little while. So yeah, please feel free to come off mute.
Yeah, great. Hey, everyone. Thanks for this presentation. It's really exciting. I've been spending a lot of the last month digging into the book, and I really recommend people look at it. It's got incredible, like just the footnotes alone and all the resources and all the thinking, and it's really fabulous. I have a few questions, but I'll just limit it to one. There's a kind of a principle that goes through the book, and which I think says that the importance of disconnecting the control that capital usually brings through like philanthropy, which Samantha alluded to, and certainly private capital, always has a lot of strings attached. I'm wondering what the kind of the thinking is to detach that control. And I know there's a bunch of case studies in the book. I'm not sure if there's one that really addresses that specifically, but I'm curious, Samantha, what your thinking is about how that would work going forward.
Yeah, it's a good question, Stephen. There's a table, and thanks for your feedback on the book. That's great to hear. There's a table in chapter 4 of the book, table 10, called Capitalizing Bioregional Financing Facilities. And in it, we go through probably 10 different types of financial capital, the sources of financial capital. And then there's a suggested narrative for each of them as to why would they want to invest in bioregional regeneration. And, kind of implied in each of those narratives is, why is there a little bit of a letting go of some of that control and engaging in this more decentralized decision-making process around how their funding is allocated. So I would encourage folks to check out that table. But the short of it is relationships, right? Like there's this vision that our very abstract financial system has kind of done everything to pull relationships out of it and just quantify and automate these processes, and that to truly support bioregional regeneration for the flows of capital, to support the flows of life again, we need to bring relationships back into how money is flowing. And so the vision, and I gave a lecture yesterday to these 21 teams that are in our BioFi cultivator about mapping their funding ecosystem and finding the right funders for their work, about the importance of thinking about, whether it's philanthropies or corporate actors or local, state, or national government actors, or in the case of the Global South, multilateral actors, starting to identify where these entities have relationships with their bioregion and have maybe an economic incentive, maybe it's a more personal incentive to engage in the regeneration of that place and to invite them to see that place, see the regenerative work happening there, meet the people there, and to start to establish a foundation of trust that can allow that capital to flow in a way that is not creating this very hierarchical power structure where the capital is controlling what's happening on the ground. And then another part of our theory there is that we can leverage digital technology and kind of indigenous or more community-based ways of knowing and ways of measuring impact to create more transparency and accountability to how this money is flowing. And of course, any, small individual project doesn't often have capacity to invest in designing a really robust and beautiful monitoring, reporting, and verification system. But if the bioregional financing facility invests in that for the whole portfolio of projects, there's a vision that there can be better information flow and transparency and mechanisms for conversations, right? If the projects are not generating the impact that the funders expected they would, is there potential to come together and have a discussion about it rather than having top-down control mechanisms built in from the beginning. There's a more relational way of adjusting how money is flowing. So those are some ways we're thinking about it. But really, I think, we're going to figure this out in practice. We're going to have to see. And there are a dozen case studies in the book. Those are all on our website as standalone PDFs. And we are adding to those on the website over time. So if any of you have suggestions for case studies we should be looking at, we welcome those. But, as we find more examples of where some of this power is being let go of, we will definitely be documenting it in case studies.
I want to come to a couple of questions, which I think are kind of both speaking to the same thing, although one more qualitative, one more quantitative. So Marjorie and Megan, Marjorie's asked, would love to hear kind of where BFFs currently exist, like who's funding them, what kind of projects they're funding, and the kinds of outcomes kind of that are being seen. And then Megan's is more on the quantitative side. So like how big is BioFi in terms of the number of organizations and the kind of the amount that's been invested currently, and what has been some of the kind of most impactful work that BioFi has kind of enabled from a kind of financial funding standpoint.
Cool. Yeah, I can answer those both together. So we would say that no bioregional financing facilities exist. So you saw the framework that I laid out earlier today. There are no financial institutions that have implemented this framework. We are incubating 21 teams that are working on designing and creating them right now. And those that are ready will present their proposed structures or maybe actual structures if they've had time to implement them in June to a presentation that we're inviting various funders, investors, and allies to. And feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to be there for that. But there are those 12 case studies that I mentioned in the book that look at several financial institutions that are doing BioFi aligned work. So maybe they're not, working on all 12 attributes. I would say that most of them do not have a bioregional regeneration strategy that is informing their work. So kind of that long-term strategy element is missing, or, maybe they're not fully taking a design thinking or living systems approach to how they're designing what they're doing. But some of those financial institutions, existing financial institutions like Hawaii Investment Ready or Spruce Root, are participating in our cultivator. Spruce Root is not, but Hawaii Investment Ready is. And they're looking at how to build on and adapt what they've already done and take it a step further. And in terms of numbers, yes, no capital has flowed to these bioregional financing facilities as of yet, but where my team is working very closely with a group called the Amazon Sacred Headwaters Alliance, which is an amazing, unprecedented alliance of 30 indigenous nations that have come together to permanently protect the headwaters of the Amazon River. And we facilitated a workshop with their team in Ecuador last month, and they would like to raise a $20 million bioregional fund next year. So we're supporting them on bringing that to life. So I would say, you know, these things are very much emergent, and we'll share more as we go along.
There was a question here from Alicia, which is around kind of experiences setting up BFFs in the UK specifically, and if there are any experiences you could share of kind of like potential challenges in doing that, and how do small voluntary groups working in cities support climate action? Yeah, that they could support the journey to building kind of one of these facilities.
Yeah, I think if you're organized with a team in your city, you're the perfect group to start working on a bioregional financing facility. You know, maybe find like an MBA program, and I know there are many in London, and find an intern that can support you on kind of the financial structuring side. But I think you're ready to go. I'll say that Dark Matter Labs is doing some work in the UK. As I mentioned, the BioFi project right now is just focused on working with teams in the Americas. But Dark Matter Labs has been doing some work in the UK, and my co-author on the book, Leon Seafield, is with Dark Matter Labs. And they've recently agreed on a partnership with Common Land to create bioregional financing facilities across Europe. And, you know, when we published the book and launched the BioFi project, we were very clear that we want this to be a framework that spreads far and wide, and that we would not be engaged in all of the bioregional financing facility projects around the world, that we wanted, you know, many different organizations to be working on this. So it's worth checking out what Dark Matter Labs is up to. There's also the Bioregional Learning Center in South Devon, and there's a case study on that in the book and on the website. And Isabel Carlisle, she's incredible. She's been doing this work for a long time. So I think there's a lot teams in the UK could learn from her.
I'm going to try and squeeze in one question, which I think is a bit more in depth, but it has been upvoted quite a bit. So Alex Forrester from Rising Tide Capital has asked, for finance people, a major way of understanding and analyzing ideas eventually involves taking a look at what they look like in terms of, in the form of financials and spreadsheets. I'm curious if there are any resource examples or templates that provide a financial view of what these kinds of activities look like at a P&L or balance sheet level, or even at a level of a term sheet. Would they be distinguishable from what we would look at, you know, for financials of an existing CDFI? And are the financial products themselves different, or is it simply a matter of intentionality in where the products are directed?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Alex. We don't have any spreadsheet templates that we can share yet, but our approach is to kind of publish and open source most things that we create. So as we get to that stage with the bioregional teams that we're working with, I think there's potential for us to, you know, to publish something. There is a regenerative term sheet template floating around on the internet that I came across a couple years ago, and I should revisit and see if that's a good resource for us to include on our website, and look at maybe how we would integrate that with the BFF attributes. But we talk about basically how a bioregional financing facility design process should look at the most catalytic projects that it wants to finance, and then develop a term sheet based on that. So in a way, it's hard to kind of templatize or create a uniform approach to this, because in each place there are a different set of projects that will come first in the sequence. And you know, we recommend the teams kind of look at what are the financial returns that those projects could produce in a sustainable or regenerative way, and then to develop term sheets with investors that are based on those returns, rather than saying, okay, this investor needs a double-digit returns, let's find projects that meet that criteria. So it's like really starting with what is needed to realize the bioregional regeneration strategy, and then developing the financial terms from there.
Thank you. Now, we've had a bunch of other questions that sadly we're not going to have time to get to. And Morris, please feel free to add your question into the chat. What we'll do is we'll kind of circulate them after this. So any questions that we didn't get a chance to cover in person, we'll kind of send some written answers to you, if that's okay with you, Samantha.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with that, I just wanted to wrap up and just say thank you so much for your time, Samantha. We really appreciate you kind of joining us today and sharing your knowledge with us. I wanted to share a couple of takeaways that that I have kind of reflecting on this discussion. So kind of three main takeaways for me. One, that finance can serve life rather than deplete it, and that bioregional financing facilities really offer this exciting new path of kind of shifting power and resources into the hands of kind of local stewards and communities that are really deeply rooted in place. Two, that regeneration is relational, not transactional. This isn't just about moving capital, it's really about cultivating relationships between people, ecosystems, and all life. And by aligning with indigenous wisdom and living systems principles, we can co-create a future where regeneration becomes the new standard. And three, that change has to be place-based and therefore decentralized. Rather than scaling, one-size-fits-all solutions, Samantha, your work really invites us to support diverse place-based efforts that reflect the unique social, ecological, and cultural fabric of each bioregion. And really, these themes are all very much at the heart of what we do at Regen City, really trying to kind of spotlight regenerative, nature-based innovation all around the world, and to deepen nature connection and build momentum for nature positive cities that are rooted in community and care. So with that, thank you so much again, Samantha. I'm going to hand over to Angela to wrap up.
Great, thanks, Ben, and special thanks again to Samantha for such a rich and engaging discussion. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. We hope you found our session insightful. Before we close, would love to get your feedback. Please take a few moments before you go to give us some live feedback. There's a QR code there, or there's a link in the chat. This really helps us improve and shape future events to support the wider community. If you haven't checked out the book yet, we've dropped some links in the chat, or Kat will shortly. The BioFi website also has loads of information and resources you can take a look at. We've also got a number of Regen City events coming up. So if you want, you can follow us on Luma or LinkedIn. Kat will also drop these in the chat. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Ben. Such a great conversation.
Thanks,
And I hope to see all of you again before too long.
Thank you.